Good morning, everyone. So my name's Rolf, and I'm an Apple consultant. I'm also a director of Command R, and we are an Apple-focused managed service provider. We are a member of the Apple Consultant Network, which is a program that Apple has that recognizes its members as qualified to help other small businesses with their Apple devices. There are only about 45 of us in the UK in this program. I'm also the first Apple Consultant Network member in the UK to obtain Apple Certified IT Professional qualifications, and possibly the first person in the UK. It's hard to tell because they don't release those statistics. What does this certificate actually mean? It means that I've gained an expertise in managing Apple devices for small businesses all the way up to enterprise, and allowing companies to properly manage their Apple devices so they know what's happening to them and what data is doing on them. So, some people would probably consider me an Apple fanboy, but I'm more about choice. In the modern workplace, computers are so in modern workplace, computers are more about an essential tool for most people's jobs. I actually believe that the right tool helps and enable employees and companies to work most effective. So in that way, I'm actually not against Microsoft or Linux or any of the other operating systems. They have their place. It's more about offering a tool that enables the end user to do their job most effectively. And if that is Apple, then it has its place in the workplace. But if we are going to offer these tools, we have a responsibility as businesses, company owners, to properly manage these devices so that we can protect our employees. It's not about spying on our employees, what they're doing, but it's about protecting them from the threats that are out there, from all the rogue attacks that you'll hear about, and also managing the data so that we as a business know where our data is. So I'm now going to, the poll came up a bit early, but okay, so it looks like simple. So the poll which you've been answering, thank you, gives me an idea about who's there. And I can see that a lot of you aren't managing devices. So I'm assuming that you're just allowing people to sign up from that and use sort of normal Apple IDs, as we call them. They're not managed by the company. So going back to protecting our companies, this is where Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus comes in. Cyber Essentials is a government-backed scheme that will help you to protect your organization, whatever its size, against a whole range of the most common cyber attacks. You can see the quote from their website there. It really is a group of policies to guide you how to best manage your IT systems. Now, why should you get Cyber Essentials? On their website, they give you 5 reasons. Now, depending on your market sector, particularly if you're dealing with government contracts, it is a requirement. Otherwise, it really is a stamp of approval to show to your suppliers that you are taking cyber security serious in your business. It's not a complex scheme. It's actually quite simple. This is their framework, or their scope of boundary, as they call it. Traditionally, this was quite simple before the pandemic for IT teams, because we used to operate in a world where computers were within an office. The IT could protect that office with a firewall. and they could defend the organization. Obviously, post-pandemic, it's got a lot trickier for IT and for businesses to control this, as we might not be in a single place of work, and we're using more SaaS applications these days. So it's become even more essential to properly manage our company's devices and data. Now, from this picture, you can see that basically, in order to obtain Cyber Essentials, we have to show that we are securing our devices. We're using firewalls to secure our internet connections. We're choosing the most secure settings for our devices and software. We're controlling who has access to the data and the services that we use. We're protecting ourselves from viruses and malware. And we're keeping our devices and software up to date. In the industry, the most secure system is the most up-to-date system. So that really is the key to most of these things. So how does this apply to Apple devices? Well, Apple is a very secure and privacy-focused company. They are a hardware manufacturer company that spends huge amounts of money on the end user experience. And because of this, they don't want this end user experience being damaged. So we have to bear this in mind when we manage Apple devices. This is the subtle difference between managing Apple devices against Windows devices. Thankfully, Apple has a secure device management framework built into every Apple device to help businesses protect and manage their devices. This has been in existence for over 10 years now and continues to be improved upon by Apple. Through these frameworks, organizations can protect corporate information and help ensure that employees meet enterprise requirements for both corporate-owned devices and personal devices. So they've been doing quite a lot of work on this BYOD model, which is important because that is company data going onto personal people's devices, which if you have no control of that data, you do not know what they're doing with it. And it's not about if they are necessarily doing bad things with your data, it's about if their personal devices get compromised, your data gets compromised. So the first part of that framework, we have Apple Business Manager. Now, this is a free web-based portal that allows IT administrators to manage and deploy all company-owned devices. The devices must be purchased from Apple business teams, Apple authorized resellers, or mobile phone carriers in order for them to be enrolled into Apple Business Manager. Now, the reason for this is that the serial numbers have to be inserted into Apple Business Managers through the correct chains for them to appear. In the last couple of years, Apple has allowed a manual enrollment process, which requires IT to manually add devices to Apple Business Manager. And to do this, we use an app called Apple Configurator. It does mean that we have to physically touch the device, and we have to have the right credentials and settings in place. So it's not complicated, but it's not the simplest way of getting your devices into Apple Business Manager. So what's the point of Apple Business Manager? So once your devices appear in Apple Business Manager portal, it allows you to assign them to a mobile device management solution of your choice, so an MDM. This is how your company can do zero-touch deployment. Once those devices are in that system, I could order a device, have it shipped to the end user in Australia, and never even touch the device. They can take it out of the box, they get the beautiful Apple experience of unpackaging, and then it will build itself according to the policies that I push out to it. And then going forwards, as a business, we have secure control. Control is probably not the best word. We have secure management of that device to enable it, to make sure that it's kept up to date. So Apple Business Manager also enables organizations to purchase and distribute apps in volume and create managed Apple IDs for users. Managed Apple IDs are an important thing because companies need to protect their data, particularly with the BYOD devices. Which managed Apple IDs, it gives you the ability to basically allow people to use BYOD on their personal Apple devices, but it creates a completely separate encrypted petition on that device. And from there, you can push the apps, you can allow them to use data, but you can control whether they're allowed to copy that data out of that petition and you open in personal apps, or you can just say that we give you the company apps and those are the apps we want you to use it. But what's also key with this is if that employee leaves, you can basically flick a switch and it will pull that petition off their device without touching any of their data. They won't even notice, apart from the fact that the company data is disappeared and the apps have disappeared. But with that, it also means that you can actually recoup your licenses. So you're not having to continually buy new licenses for new employees. You can reuse the licenses that you've paid for. So there's a cost saving there. Managed Apple IDs can also be federated against Microsoft Azure and Google Workspace. And what that means is that if you set it up properly, you can basically use the same credentials that you would use to sign into your Office 365 or your Google Workspace as your managed Apple ID. So going on from there, we've got mobile device management, which I mentioned. So once the devices are in Apple Business Manager, we need to use an MDM to control the devices. There are lots on the market. It's become quite a competitive industry. Each of the MDMs have their strengths and they have their capabilities. So it is about finding the right MDM that fits your business and what you want to do. MDM is a lightweight Apple framework. It's built into all the Apple devices. And with MDM, we have the capability to push out settings and security policies and apps and pretty much set up a device how a business wants it to be used. And then going forwards, we can maintain that device and we can make sure that software updates are in place. It allows us to really configure the devices over the air without having to physically touch every device. Now, where does this fit in with Cyber Essentials? One of the key things about Cyber Essentials that they want to see when they do their audits is that all your devices are up to date. Now, I have heard of businesses who go around on the day of the audit, they click update, and they physically have to touch every one of those devices to make sure that all the updates are in place. With MDM, we have a portal that we can see what state each device is in. We can push the updates to those devices, and we can ensure that it's not just on the day of the audit that we have this. We can ensure that all the year, that all our devices have the latest security updates. Now, Apple have also released in the last 6 months, something called declarative device management, which is an extension to MDM. Now, this is actually very exciting in the industry because it actually is a mechanism that extends MDM that allows us as businesses to say that we need these devices on this operating system with these patches by this date, and it will make sure that happens. And it feeds back into the system to say that it has been done. Because one of the problems we had with MDM was that we could push out a lot of these updates, but it didn't always feed back as clearly as we needed to know. And sometimes devices disappeared off it. So this is a big upgrade to the MDM process. But what it also means is that traditionally we'd push out updates, and a lot of people would get the update window and they would move it up into the top corner or hide it in the bottom because they said they're too busy. Well, with declarative, we have the ability to basically say, you can defer this 2-3 times, depending on what we set it as. And then we are going to do this update because it is important. Now, one of the other factors with Cyber Essentials is they recommend that updates, security updates, should be installed within 14 days of them being released. That's best practice in the security industry. Now, when you've got people who are sort of hiding update windows, which I've heard stories of people who do it for 6 months, and it literally took the IT people to go there and say, right, I'm doing the update. We can stop that behavior, and we can make sure that these devices are up to date. They have the latest security updates. They have the latest patches. Now, there is also a twist to this because Apple traditionally releases a new operating system every year after WWDC, as they call it. Now, a lot of users are quite keen to click and install the updates or even the betas the minute they are available, which as a business can affect your work because not all software vendors actually update their software to be compatible with those new software updates or OS updates. With MDM, we can actually control that. We can say they can't install betas. We can control that when the new releases come out, we can defer it. Now, Apple allows us to defer major upgrades, as they're called, for up to 90 days. So it means as a business, we can ensure that all our software, which is mission critical, is ready before we allow people to update their system and wreck anything. So moving on from there, we've got endpoint security. Apple has also created an endpoint security API for third-party developers. It's built into the actual operating system. And with it gives endpoint security companies the ability to plug into the operating system. These solutions can monitor systems, events, and potentially malicious activity. And since the security API is built on a system extension, not a legacy kernel extension, these solutions preserve the integrity of macOS and the user experience, but do not impact the overall performance. Now, what this really means is that if you've got a security program, we use Malwarebytes, it will actually plug into the operating system. It will monitor the system for you for malicious activity, but it doesn't affect the overall performance. Now, traditionally, we've heard a lot of people say with some of the bigger AV companies, when they install these, it slowed down their system. It actually affected a lot of people's workloads. So people didn't like those endpoints. With the newer system extensions that Apple has created, which has this, is built into the system, this means that we can actually monitor these systems for malware. We can push out updates to protect them against malware, But overall, the end user will not even notice those malware protection software is running in the background. So going back to the Cyber Essentials, one of the 5 controls was about ensuring systems are up to date with security patches. As I said, MDM gives IT the ability to make sure all companies' devices have these security patches installed in a timely manner. There is no need to manually go around each machine and click the update button. One thing that, so as I was saying, with the release of macOS Sonoma and iOS 17, Apple has introduced declarative device management. The other thing that they've also released in the last 6 months is they are now doing something called rapid security response patches. Now, these give the businesses the ability to get important security updates separate from normal or soft updates, so that users can automatically stay up to date. These are basically vulnerabilities that are brought up on the security databases, and they are deemed quite serious. So you want to patch those as quickly as possible. In the older model of software updates, you used to have to wait till, say, Apple or whoever had produced their next software update, which could be 30 days, depending on when these vulnerabilities are released. With this new rapid security response, Apple are basically patching those security responses far quicker, which means that your business is protected. And then there will be most likely a software update later on where that security response is included as well for those people who didn't necessarily respond to any security response patches. Most likely because their machine was offline at the time. So next, Cyber Essentials recommends the use of strong passwords and PINs with company devices. MDM allows IT to not only enforce password and PIN usage across all your devices, but they can specify the complexity required. Paired with a secure enclave, which processes face and fingerprint data from Face ID and Touch ID sensors in Apple devices, you have a strong combination of password security. The secure enclave keeps your users' biometric data private and secure. That's the critical thing here about going back to Apple's privacy. The secure enclave is a chip in all of Apple's devices, and it is something that as businesses, we cannot read. It is locked up in there and connected with the end user's biometrics, but it does talk backwards and forwards to all the security mechanisms that MDM says. So when we say we need a password, we can enable also fingerprint recognition. So it gets rid of that where people go, oh, I don't want to put in an 8-digit PIN number or a 6-digit PIN number, because they create that, but generally they can use Face ID or Touch ID to get into those devices quicker. Finally, the latest M series devices support secure boot, which ensures that Macs start up only from an OS that is trusted by Apple. This ensures that device security cannot be bypassed with a tampered version of the OS. Again, this is quite important because a lot of hackers, the way they have breached systems in the past is they have used modified versions of an operating system. And so they are actually lurking in the background of it. With the secure boot mechanism, that can't happen, because unless it has Apple's signature on that update, it will not install on your device. So it adds a level of security that means that you know that the updates that are being installed are from the right source. The other thing Cyber Essentials recommends is that all data should be protected by encryption. Now, all Apple devices come with built-in encryption. They have Firewall and data protection with Apple Silica, ensures that the data remains secure on the disk and cannot be accessed without proper permissions. If you buy a Windows device or an Android device, quite often you have to buy an additional piece of software in order to add that encryption to it. Firewall can be managed by by your IT teams as well, ensuring all your company-owned Macs computers have encryption enabled and the keys are stored centrally. This is back in your MDM system, or during the initial setup. So the minute they're taking them out of the box, you can ensure that it is encrypted and all your data is safe on those devices. To add to that, the Apple file system, so APFS. So this is how the hard disks, or these days SSDs, are formatted within Apple inside an Apple device. It is also built and optimized specifically for encryption. With Firewall and APFS, there's no need to add any additional encryption software to make sure that your devices are secure. So we move on to the software that is deployed on your devices. The apps the users need for their work. Apple's app security model ensures that third-party software is either distributed through secure Mac App Store, through the Secure App Mac App Store, or is notarized by Apple to verify that it's free from any malware. This is really the first layer of defense against protecting against malware ever even reaching your system. And what it means is that everything that you download from the App Store, you have to submit it to Apple in the first place before it is published. Apple will actually check every piece of that software to make sure there is nothing malicious inside that software. So that is their first line of defense, is you know that anything you get from the App Store is secure. The notarization, they've gone further, it basically means that if you want your software to be manually installed onto it, you have to get a certificate that's from Apple that verifies that your software, again, has nothing malicious installed on it. So the Mac App Store and notarization work in conjunction with something called Gatekeeper. It's a security technology designed to ensure only trusted software runs on a user's Mac. Now, organizations can choose if users are allowed to download software only from the Mac App Store or identified developers. And organizations can prevent users from installing software that is from unknown developers. All of these are MDM commands that we can push out to these devices. And going forwards also, through MDM, organizations can also deploy the software end users need for their jobs while centrally managing the licenses. Basically, MDM gives us the ability to, as I was saying earlier, you can purchase the licenses through from the App Store and deploy them that method, or with a lot of MDM platforms, you can upload your own software and push it out to devices. So it means that you know that the software the end users is using, where it's come from. They're not just going off onto the web searching for something and downloading it. It comes from a trusted source. So added on top of that, we have something called XProtect, which again is built into all Macs. And XProtect is a antivirus technology that Apple has. It is basically their own malware scanner. XProtect detects any known malware and removes them from Macs. Apple automatically actually is issuing updates to that XProtect without you knowing in the background. So if you are running Mac devices already, you have a level of malware protection. You just might not even know it's happening in the background. So to round it all up, one of the key features that MDM allows an organization is the ability to manage a device and its data if it gets stolen or lost. So it means that if that device gets left behind or is stolen on the bus or a taxi, you as a business have the ability to lock the device and then remote wipe the device to ensure that the company data never falls into the wrong hands. And that, as I was saying, because those devices are already encrypted, is only the risk there of the data falling into the wrong hands is if someone figures out the password. Now, again, hopefully, if you've enforced strong passwords, that should be a very slim possibility. But it just gives you the peace of mind that you can actually wipe these devices. And that's the point of having them centrally managed. If you just allow people to set up Apple devices using personal Apple IDs, you as a business have no control over these aspects of their devices because of that privacy element that Apple has. That device is deemed as their device by Apple. Whereas if you use Apple Business Manager, then that device becomes a company-owned device, and you as a business have the ability to make sure that it is protected, it has the right software. It also gives you the ability that if that end user, if that employee leaves, you can also redeploy that device quite quickly. These days with MDM and the new Apple Silica, we can redeploy a Mac within about 5 minutes. So we can actually push out commands which say, this person is left, we can back up the data, and it will wipe the device, and it will be a fresh device ready for the next user. So my one takeaway from this presentation, hopefully to everyone, is if you haven't got Apple Business Manager for your business, sign up for it. It's free to do. And also in that process, add your company domain to it so that you can start to pull back or make sure that people aren't using their company emails for personal Apple IDs. You want to make sure that your data, your devices are properly managed, and that's the process. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolf. Did anyone have any questions?
I guess
Chris,
just quickly.
I think Chris might. Chris, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I guess my question is, we use Macs throughout the business. We do use people's personal accounts on them. I guess how much time do you think it takes to transfer over? Do you find to set this up, get them all into Business Manager, manage all that process? I'm just curious because
yeah,
something I think we've been meaning to do, but yeah, it's just interesting to know what you think a time frame is.
There's a lot of companies that have this. I've actually been helping one recently with this. And when you set up Apple Business Manager, you have to go through the various checks that Apple give you. So generally, it takes about a week, I think, to actually get the Apple Business Manager account set up. because they need to verify you are a business. And then you can add your domain. Now, they have a mechanism within Apple Business Manager where will actually go through all the email addresses that are associated with your domain and say, right, this is being used as a personal Apple ID. And then it will push out a message to every one of those users that they have 60 days to change the Apple ID email address because the company is reclaiming that email address. So that they have that mechanism. Obviously, it won't allow you to move the data because of this privacy thing. You know, Apple IDs traditionally are a personal thing, and Apple will not let you take over someone's personal Apple ID. So unfortunately, if there's any data in those Apple IDs, it is a manual process that you have to download it and then copy it across to the company. But as I was saying, in terms of claiming those addresses, it can take up to 60 days, depending on how proactive the end users are of changing their address.
I think probably in our case, so we store all our data in the cloud, so we don't have any local storage of the data. So that's not that's fairly easy. It's more, most people probably sign into their Macs with their own personal Apple ID they use for their phone and their Mac. So I'm not too worried about claiming back the company domain emails. It's more setting up partitions, I guess, on their Macs between their personal and the business partition, I guess. It's probably the bit.
So are you using single sign-on with your Macs?
No, they just use their normal biometric sign-in with their fingerprint to their IDs. Usually it's their personal Mac IDs. That makes sense.
Yeah, so if the data is stored on that device and you are using a lot of cloud services, then the only real difference that they will notice is that is the things like the App Store and Apple Music. Now you can still have a personal Apple ID and a company ID, Apple ID on the same device. At present, managed Apple IDs are more about, I guess, the BYOD model. So if you've got an iPhone, there is a mechanism you can actually sign into your work account, and it puts a whole new Apple ID underneath yours, and that is that separate encrypted partition it's created. So that at present, that's really the main purpose of Apple IDs. There is more to come. Apple are quite secretive about this, so there's subtle signals coming out. There's more to Apple IDs because they've managed Apple IDs because they've been pushing them. But at present, it shouldn't matter to your end users if you reclaim those managed Apple IDs, because your data is, as I was saying, predominantly in other cloud storages. Where you might notice the difference is with some iOS devices, if that Apple ID is their main one, is their backups. They will be trying to think. They're in a separate. The backups won't, or the iOS backups will be in their actual personal, what's seen as the personal Apple ID. It is a bit complicated, and it's a bit of a mess. And when businesses have done that, and it does take time to slowly unpick it. But generally, your end users, because you're not signing in, you're not logging into your Macs with your Apple IDs. That's not your user credential. That's an actual local admin or standard user account. It shouldn't affect them. It's thinking about the future. Now, also, if you are, in your case, you're obviously an established business, but if you're a startup, it's always good to get these things in early so that you don't have these problems down the line of people who've used personal Apple IDs, because they are very different than managed Apple IDs.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks.
Yes. Chris, I suppose, do you supply the laptops to your employees?
Yeah.
Oh, you do, yeah, because obviously that's the difference. Because a lot of people now, they go, "Oh, you've got a laptop, carry on using it instead." So, but if it's your property, then really, truthfully, they should have one for work and then one for their own personal business. That's in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. It's more just, I guess, for speed, and yeah, we just tend to haven't got around to doing it yet, I guess, for speed, and also most of the, for example, all the data that we have, like we have a policy that no one stores it locally; it's all on the cloud. So actually, on device, it's very limited. Maybe people download the odd file to do some editing locally, but we have like a company-wide policy that you don't store data locally. Basically, everything's in the cloud service: Google, GitHub, Adobe Cloud, anything like that, basically.
Yeah. So if your devices are in that Apple Business Manager, it then means that Apple recognizes those devices are your company devices. By signing them into personal Apple IDs, it puts those devices into a state that where Apple, if you were to take them into an Apple store to see a genie, they would be seen as personal devices, not business devices. So it means that it's harder for you as a business to get things done with those devices, because it really then starts to fall back on the end user has to give permission for stuff. Whereas if they're in Apple Business Manager, you can say, right, I'm the boss, I'm the IT manager. I can show you I've bought these, and you can authorize work on those. You can authorize them to be unlocked. Now, a classic case I've seen a lot of is that people forget their PIN numbers. They accidentally change it, and the email address to reset it doesn't work because, again, there's been an error there. Now, you can take those into Apple and have that security level removed, but you have to show an original purchase invoice for that device as the end user. Now, if it's you purchase them as a business, it wouldn't align with the users, and so it gets into this murky water of being able to prove who actually owns the device. So it's far simpler to get it into the Apple Business Manager, but also that, as I was saying, with the zero touch deployment makes life so much easier, because you don't have to physically handle each device. You can literally give it to the end user, let them start it up, but you know that everything your company wants that device to do is centrally managed, and you have control of it, and you have the ability to wipe the device automatically if you need to. Whereas if they're in personal Apple IDs, you'd have to log into each one of those Apple IDs and go to Find My and go lost and delete. So it makes the whole process a lot simpler as a business.
Thank you. Go over to Peter and then on to Dan.
Hi, Rolf. That was very interesting, and it's given me a lot more confidence in cyber security. And with, I mean, I do like Apple devices. So I've actually got both, but the reason I've got both is the company's still developing, and we would be looking to buy computers when we have the investment and the staff to use the computers.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest problems I've come across, being in engineering, is that the compatibility of drawing packages. In that the drawing package you want to use, you can't use on an Apple Mac. You've got to buy a thing. Has that changed? Because I mean, it's a couple of years ago when I looked, and I think there's things like even AutoCAD and SolidWorks wouldn't work on an Apple.
It has. A lot more companies now are supporting Apple. They're growing in the enterprise. Companies like Cisco are now at about 60% Apple users, apparently. So there was a presentation a couple of months ago from their CTO, and they've offered this choice program where they allow people to choose between a Windows device or a Mac. And they're actually finding that their numbers are up to about 60% Mac users and growing. So because of that, that has put a lot of pressure onto the software developers to start supporting both platforms. I know AutoCAD does work on Mac because I have a couple of architects that I support and they use AutoCAD. It might not be all the versions, so it is still worth checking. And there is obviously some specialist software that the developers haven't just, I guess they don't have the resources to write it for the Mac platform. But generally it is the number of software packages out there are increasing that are compatible across all platforms. I guess the big move to SaaS applications is also helped because that doesn't really matter what platform you're using because you are using the internet. So I know a lot of these companies are basically having a web page version of their software, which is fully capable. We do quite a lot of Wi-Fi design, and one of the new players in the market, Hermina, their Wi-Fi design software is fully operated in the cloud. So it doesn't matter what platform you work on, you can do that planning. Now, traditionally, it was always a very downloaded package type environment. So things are changing. Going back to the devices on getting them for your business, that also has changed a lot in the industry. All Apple business stores have Apple business teams, and their sole purpose is to basically work with small businesses to help them get Apple devices into their workplace. Now, that could be that you buy it up front, you could lease them, or you can get finance. So they have various options now to actually help businesses get these devices. And then one final bit to add to that, which the CTO of Cisco released, is that one of the reasons, or one of the things they've found from their big program, is the actual cost of ownership of devices. They've done a lot of analysis of that over the last 3 years. And they've actually found it's cheaper for them as a business to run Apple devices than it is Windows, because they actually, they have less service tickets. They have less hardware failure, they're finding. And then after their traditional, say, 4 years refresh cycle that they do, they're still actually able to sell those devices and recoup about 30% of the value. Whereas I know in the Windows market, you almost pretty much have to pay someone to take your Windows device away as a business and ensure that it's encrypted. So it's something to bear in mind if you are thinking about using Apple devices. You know, if you look at the upfront cost, yes, it looks very expensive, but you've got to think about it as a tool over 3 or 4 years for your business. And then when you calculate that in, they're actually quite reasonable.
So what you're saying is everybody's going towards basically accessing packages through browsers.
It seems to be the trend right now. Whether we'll have a shift that goes back, but as a software as a service is a big thing these days, and that is utilizing the cloud. So it really depends on what software I would say look back at the software that you use and ask them, do they offer a Mac version, or do they offer an online version? Because those options are definitely improving nowadays. And it is making it a lot easier for companies to basically offer that choice of what device the people want to actually work on.
In terms of browsers, I mean, you've got Safari on Apple Macs, and it's not too bad. I mean, I've always tended to use Google Chrome, but what I'm finding these days is that like the likes of Norton are taking over my Google Chrome and adding extra things in. The other companies are tending to try and control the browser. Now, does that happen with Safari, or if I wanted to run a Chrome on the Apple Macs, is that a problem, or is it becoming a problem?
No, not at all. So you can actually have choose what browser you want. You can use Safari, you can use Microsoft Edge, you can use Chrome. Each of them have their, I guess, segment of the market, their strength. Edge is actually not a bad browser these days. And Microsoft are also heavily putting investment into Copilot, which is their AI. It's based around the ChatGPT model. And right now you can use Edge with Bing, which is basically their integration into Copilot. As of, I think, mid next year, they will be releasing the full Copilot, which that goes into Office and stuff. But so there is that option. So, web browsers is a very personal thing. Some people have a preference, and, as a company, you can let them choose which web browser you want. You can deploy those web browsers through MDM. You can, with a lot of MDM providers, you can even create what we call self-service portals. So it looks like its own app on the Mac. And when it opens up, the end user can choose what software they need, and it will install it. And you're controlling that software. So you can give your option, and this is where, managing Macs is very different than how you do it on Windows. It's about enabling the end user, and you can't. Yeah, it's not Big Brother in that way. With Windows devices, traditionally it was locked down. IT was God. You do what you're told, otherwise that's it. Mac doesn't allow that. The end user is so important. They want that end user to have a great experience. They've spent billions on this, so they won't let us mess it up. So it's about, through the MDM, it's about giving the end user the tools they need, which works with that end user experience. So if they want to use Firefox, you can allow it. You can offer it as a download. If they want to use Chrome, you can offer it as a download. Chrome, as you were saying, does have all these extensions, and you can control some of those extensions. I think the problem with Chrome is to control those, though, you'd have to do that through Google Workspace. So I don't know, are you a Microsoft 365 user or a Google Workspace user?
365.
Okay.
But I used Chrome, and then and we were using BullGuard. BullGuard got taken over by Norton, and now it's sort of like seems to have taken over the computer. It's taken over my Chrome. So every time I go into a search, it's going through Norton, and I'm finding that the search is not as good. What I'm looking for, what normally comes at the top of the pile, is way down the list. I'm going to the bottom of the page. It's coming all these other things. So I don't know how to get rid of it yet.
So that would be within Chrome. There would be you can go into extensions, and it will have BullGuard is listed. So you can actually either disable that extension so it doesn't control it, or you could actually uninstall it, and that would remove it from controlling what Chrome's doing
without affecting the cyber security side of things.
Yeah, that's kind of like a program within a program sort of thing. Extensions do get a bit complicated in that way, particularly within web browsers. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dan and then Neil. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, just a quick one. So thanks very much. Really informative so far. So yeah, appreciate all of the advice you've been given. To kind of flip it from the other side, rather than as a business offering Apple business to users to secure that, I'm obviously a consultant. I have multiple clients. So I have my own personal laptop with all of my own business stuff on there, but I do use client software, which is primarily cloud. So like, for example, I have a Miro account, and a lot of the stuff for one client all goes on their Miro account. I have multiple email addresses, and at the moment I'm kind of got Google or Chrome open, and I have like different profiles. So like if I'm doing work on X client, I use X browser, and it's kind of all set up like that. Is there a kind of way of being able to do that with Apple? So I have my personal Apple ID. Could I have like client A Apple ID on my laptop, client B Apple, to kind of partition it and keep it much more separate? So then the data doesn't overflow. It doesn't kind of mix and kind of get all muddied up, like to keep it really, really segregated. Is that a possibility as well?
Yes. So the way you could do that is you could actually create a new user on the device. So you could sign in to a separate user account. And if that company has Apple IDs and stuff, that Apple ID can be signed in that user. So and then they're completely separate sort of spaces. And then so with that, you wouldn't have that merge of data.
Yeah.
So that's how I would, if you are working for multiple clients and you want to keep everything separate, that's how I would recommend to do it. You can then also enable something called Fast Switcher, which puts a little icon up in the top right hand of the menu bar, which allows you to basically log into the other partition quicker without having to go log out, log in, sort of thing. So yes, you can do that.
Okay, cool. That's really good advice. Thank you very much. Good to something I can look into. Thank you.
That's all right.
Over to Neil, and then we will wrap it up. Yeah.
Cool. Hi. Thanks very much,
All right,
Rolf.
Neil.
Learned a lot. No, I was just wondering, does Apple have any independent data on how much happier employees are when they get shiny Macs versus kind of slightly underperforming PCs?
I'm sure they do. I wouldn't. It might be a bit biased, I would have thought, coming from Apple. That's why, actually, I will send out to everyone, I guess, the presentation from the CTO of Cisco. They've released a lot of data on this through to that sort of how it's improved performance. They've released a spreadsheet calculator which companies can use to see the cost of ownership put in. So that presentation, which happened 2 months ago at the Jamf user conference, which is a big MDM provider, has put out a lot of information about Macs in the workplace and how it's improving. So I think they would probably have a better unbiased view on this, because they are offering choice, and that's the point. So their data will, I think, be more accurate to show how effective it is. I guess from their studies, the fact that they're starting to see more companies or more users choose Apple devices is an indication that it's making people happier as well.
I was just wondering, because I mean, obviously, I've been on the a Mac or a designer since like the late 90s. Always been a troublemaker in large corporations, insisting that I have them. But is a lot of this being driven by the iPhone and the fact that people are needing Apple IDs and that they're on that platform, so therefore it makes sense to actually then use the computers as well?
I think so. It's hard. The iPhone has definitely changed the marketplace. I mean, if we think back, 10 years ago, BlackBerry was the dominant. All you ever saw was everyone using BlackBerries. And then the iPhone was released, and BlackBerry no longer exists. I mean, they are now just a software service. So, and if you walk around the city, all you see is company people with an iPhone predominantly. So they have dominated the business world in that. They have been criticized in the past, Apple, of being a bit slow of coming into the enterprise space. But I think it was because they wanted to make sure that they got the personal device space right. They are not the quickest company sometimes to come into market, because it all goes back to that user experience. You know, when they come into a market, they want to make sure that the user has the best experience possible and it doesn't damage the Apple brand. So they will hold back. What has accelerated the use of Apple devices, particularly in the enterprise space, is the new MacBook Airs. With the M series processors that they've been releasing, they are really, really fast, and the battery life is incredible. I mean, you could go to work and never have to carry your charger for the whole day. And you've got this lightweight, ultra thin device. So companies in America, which is where I see a lot of this, I follow a lot of what happens on the American market, because I'd say in the Apple world, they're probably 2 years ahead of us. So what happens over there, we'll probably see 2 years down the line. And yeah, there's a lot of demand for those MacBook Airs, because they are such a capable machine for the price, and the battery life is phenomenal. And I think the other thing that we're also got to bear in mind is that Generation Z is now entering the workplace. Now, if we look at a lot of them, when they've been doing their degrees, they've been using personal Apple devices. Now they're coming into our businesses, and you present them with a Windows device, they're going to look at you and go, but I like using this. So it's something to bear in mind that, you know, if we want to attract new talent, the right talent, maybe we also will have to allow this, because that's what they're used to using. It's a user experience. But, you know, going back to your question a bit also is, I don't think Apple is necessary for everyone. You know, some people work better on a Windows device. Their minds work well with that software. Now, if that's what makes them most effective, that is the tool they should be using. But I personally work better on an Apple device. I've worked on Windows devices. I can use them, but I know I'm more effective on a Mac device. And so that's the tool that actually makes me more effective in my job. So it is something to bear in mind as businesses. It's working out what's, you know, with our software that we use, with what we do on a daily basis, which platform actually enables our users to be most effective. And I guess being most effective, hopefully, will also make them happy.